Okay, we are set to go. So first of all, thank you for joining in this particular webinar. And my name is Anirban. I am a principal consultant with Meteonic, and today we'll be venturing into some of the issues that we as an embedded engineers face while the re-engineering as a task has been given to us. So, first of all, I would like to give you an understanding about the issues that I would like to address today. And then eventually I will take you to the solution set that I have, which I generally use or have used earlier also. And then we can take the discussion forward with some kind of a questions, whatever you might be having. At any point in time, if you people are basically not able to see the screen or there's an audio problem, please do let me know so that I can just rectify it immediately. Okay, so to go ahead, these are the four main challenges what we will try to address today in this particular session. One of them is of mixed asset and the development platforms. So in my experience in terms of the embedded world, I have seen the major problem that we face is a set of assets that I have to work on. So essentially, I think this is a problem which each one of us has faced at some point in the other in terms of incorporating a particular family of MCU or MPUs, or maybe working on a specific RTOS if you are actually being in consideration of taking some RTOS by your own side. So those are some of the things that we need to be a bit more taking care of when we actually would like to take one particular embedded platform to another to incorporate some of the security standards or security measures. So I would eventually come up with some of the industry problems, specific industries problems that I have faced across. But this, whatever I'm mentioning, happens to be a generic problem across any of the industry, including automotive or locomotive or aerospace or any other industry in that case. The second one that we would like to address is the challenges we come across on frequent changes. And here I'm talking about changes mainly due to the memory footprints or due to some of those particular assets that we have used going out of the service period or some upgradations required by the clients time and again. So these are the changes which actually I have seen coming across in one cycle itself. So if you are talking about a project development of a particular embedded projects, I have seen the lifespan to be in a typical aeronautical project. I have seen it to be a program for 6 years kind of a scenario, and in terms of smaller ones, I have seen in terms of 3 years or maybe at a shorter duration of 2.5. So, but in all scenarios, the frequency of changes is huge, and the impact or maybe the things that we need to test on if some new things come up on board is a huge challenge for us. So we'll talk about something of that sort. The third thing that we would like to address today is the security and the traceability part. So here the main the thing that is coming up, or maybe the challenge statement over here, is the changes which has been made on the baseline industry standard itself. Let us consider that I'm talking about a standard of DO178C, which is prevalent in terms of aerospace, or maybe some of the I would say IC61508 as a generic term itself. So there are certain changes that has been made over time and again on a yearly basis, which needs to be incorporated in the code, which is again a challenging job. The other part, which is again very interesting to see, is the kind of the legacy problem that we always face. So here I'm talking about legacy means I'm talking about inheriting some of the code base which is already in the institutions, Maybe it should be in a form of an open source libraries somewhere, but I do not see much of that happening in the embedded side. But I always see that in terms of if a stack has been purchased from outside. So in terms of those particular legacy code being taken, understood, and then incorporated within the code, again is one of the challenging things that we always face. So we'll talk about that. And the last thing is the main whatever we are talking about, the main processes part on the DevOps scenario, where productivity and time to market is always a challenge. So we take care of all these 5 issues one by one. I'll not elaborate. I do not have too much time to elaborate on each one of those issues, deep dive into it, but I'll try to point each one of them in mind. Okay. So coming to the first problem of tackling an array of assets. So I see the major problem over here is that if I am being given a particular choice of different platforms being taken, and I have twofold challenges here. One is like if I'm being actually working as an architect to a particular project, and there I have to choose a specific platform which is robust, which is secure, then I need to be very much sure about that particular platform's integrity or integration capability of that particular platform to the other platform existing. And another challenge is the customer's preference, because most of the time I see that these particular things are driven by the clients themselves. So the clients give us a list of the platforms that need to be worked on. In both the circumstances, if I get a particular solution or maybe a particular kind of a dashboard where I can give these as an input, and that particular platform is intelligent enough to give me a parsed information based on the environments that I've set, then my work is a bit easier. So the picture I'm trying to show is basically of a platform which allows me to do so. So there might be a lot many ways to be done. I have taken one of the way in which it can be integrated. So what I'm mentioning is a kind of a platform where whichever kind of platform which is existing in the market, I would say it can be anything starting from an ARM to a QNX platform to anything in the platform of the tasking or something of the other which you might be using should be populated in that drop down, and I can pick from there, and I can actually tell that particular platform to kind of give me a AST, which we call as abstract syntax tree of a particular code base based on that particular platform. So this capability allows me to understand that particular code base in correlation to a particular set of platform that I have chosen. Okay. So basically in embedded, we know that very carefully that these are all very specific. Our codes are very specific to an environment. So every time, if you are basically like in the industry, you should be knowing it, that every time when I actually take up a particular project in scope, so the first thing I would be getting some brought in finished or BIF codes with me, and I have to actually port them in a particular environment, and I will check that particular integrity, and then I can use it. So those kind of asset control and development environment controls can be taken care if we are using a platform like this. So that is one of the way to do it. So I'll come to the other part about which are the options available to us to see that. So I've taken some snapshot. I'm taking a snapshot from that particular option, one of the options. Okay. The next part, which I always have a kind of a thing, is about the frequent changes. So let me understand, or let me put this in a more of clarity. So if I'm actually talking about challenges in terms of changes or frequent changes, I am also not only bothered about the new platforms coming in, I am also bothered about the changes keeping the platform constant. So let us consider that I have a particular project which is actually being driven from a one particular baseline and to add some more features to add it a more capability being enhanced on the same platform. So in those scenarios, I need a particular platform again where I can actually compare these particular two platforms. Now you have to be very careful about certain things. When I say compare, I actually mean something like a file churn report or maybe a build churn report. Now, there are numerous ways to achieve that. But on a holistic level, if I do not want to go into a very deep level, I do not want to go in a very deep dive into what are the certain changes, but I want to have a holistic view of that on a program level. So I need a kind of a tool which can actually say, okay, fine, these were the kind of a date code which has been there, which has been taken care of now. This has been kind of line count that used to have, this has been taken care of now. Or maybe another thing, that complexity, you have added 5 lines of code which has increased my complexity to double. So those are the certain changes that I have made in the particular code over a period of time on a particular release based, which has actually made my product maybe not that lucrative to the market, or maybe I have unknowingly made my product very complex to use or maybe complex to debug. Okay, so these are certain things which can be taken care of if I am having a particular window which allows me to do this particular comparison on a comparison space. So there are a lot many ways we do it. I'll come to that part.
May I ask one question?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
As per the compares, whatever you are saying to identify the date codes.
Correct.
So how does it possible without because it's a comparable compared suit is there, na? So whatever the changes, so might be if a project is the big project, so they might be call those source code is the somewhere. How we can identify for these tools compared suit as a date code?
Okay, so okay, the date code are basically unused codes, right? So basically, when I even want to compare a pedigree of a particular project to another pedigree and compare the date code asset only, what I need essentially to do is basically build the entire project once, the earlier build with a particular tool, and use the same tool to build the next build of that particular source code, because there will be some components in the second build which might be calling those part of the date code which has not been the case in the first build. Okay, so those two compiled, or maybe I would say parsed data, if you actually put side by side and then compare, then you will be able to understand the diff. So if you are talking about anything in terms of unreachable code or a date code or something of that sort, it is not like you just take the two codes and put it side by side, you will know it. It's basically in the back end, the thing is you need to have a parsing mechanism, good enough parsing mechanism, which can actually give you a kind of a parsed data, which you can compare side by side. Do I answer your question? Because
Uh, Yeah, so you mean to say that when no, I mean my questions are different for the regarding. Okay, so who is going to compile the whatever you are saying, the compiling the source code? So this is only for the compared suit is there, na?
no, no, no,
So
no, no.
compared suit
So,
is
so,
built.
so, so compare suite, whichever I'm pointing out. Okay, this particular compare suite will be an integrated part of some other solutions. I will tell you that. I will come to that. So
Okay, sure,
there are
sure.
some
Go ahead,
specific
go ahead.
ways to
Yeah,
do that. Okay.
oh, sure, go
Uh,
ahead.
so the next part which I wanted to also point out is the security compliance challenges. Now this is literally something which is in the back of everyone's mind. I'm sure that in your project development this will be coming in terms of any project audit. The major problem here is that when I start the project, because if I'm talking about an aviation, as I mentioned, it is typically of 6 months program, 6 years program. Every year a certain type of change has come up in that particular security lines, and I have actually not adhered to that just because it was not available in the start of my project. Now how I can introduce them, or how I can actually understand what I have missed out, keeping in mind that I need not to, or I cannot go ahead and change everything. Okay, So again, you need to employ some tools to do that. Now there obviously are some tools in the market commercially available. Some are available in open source format which will allow you to do so. But what I'm saying you is basically a kind of an overview where all things come in together. Like these are what I'm talking about is basically a compact solution. Okay, so you need to be always in the lookout for a compact solution to get you all of these particular problem challenging in one particular suite, not in 100 suites. That is obvious that you need to have some suites specific to different tasks, different part of problems to be solved. But if it can be done in one suite, it is always better. So you need to have that particular thing because it cannot be done manually. So you need to have a checklist of that particular whatever the new checkers which has come specific to the securities, and you need to actually bombard your source code against that and create a pedigree, or maybe create a particular kind of um, list of what are the diffs, and you need to go to that back one by one and take it out. So that's the normal flow. So I'll tell you about like how interestingly you can actually do that through a very simple way, putting it all together. Okay, the next part is the discovery part. Now this is quite interesting because most of the time in my career, people have asked that, and even what is basically the main concern here? Is the main concern that I need to literally understand the code to use it, or it is a concern that I want to maybe re-engineer a particular, or maybe if it is a case that I want to just know it somewhere, I do not bother to read the code at all. Whatever is there. I just want to add some more things to that. How can I achieve that? Because to be very honest, time is very short. People do not have too much time to get into all the nitty-gritties of the code which has been written over the ages, right? So that, keeping that in thought, there are a lot of solutions which has been available in the market in the commercial as well as open source space, which allows you to do so. The question is which one you can pick it. So I will tell you some of them which you can actually have a look and have a check. So you can actually then understand that what is the difference between them and where you should be focusing when you pick up this kind of a tool. Okay, because this again cannot be done manually because it is impossible to actually understand the pedigree manually. So this is something, a very essential component when you're talking about the embedded. Specifically embedded I'm mentioning, the reason is that it is something which has been written earlier, which was keeping in mind some earlier environment, which has nothing to do with the new one. So porting is not that easy. So if you take that as of like just like that, it definitely will fail. It will not work. Okay. Okay. The picture what I have given is from one of the tools available in the market, which allows you to get you that kind of a drill down activity or drill down reports, I would say. Okay, so let me give you some. This particular tool is a tool which I have used for a long time. I am very open to use any solutions which is available in the market. I'm a very kind of a flat guy in that scenario. But here my intention is to show you other products available, keeping one particular product as a baseline. Okay, so please keep that in mind and try to understand where I'm coming from. So there are products like, if I'm talking about some products, there's a product called Source Insight, which allows you to do some kind of a inspection. There is there is some capabilities of that particular same thing within Visual Studio's 2015 and 17 versions, if some people are using that as an IDE. Some capabilities are already present in some tools like Inspect is a tool which is available. In fact, Deloitte, if you actually known to that company, give you a particular professional service, and there is a kind of a internal tool they have also to achieve this kind of a code discovery scenario as well as giving you parse data. But here, all of these, keeping all of these, even Eclipse has certain platforms to do that, but I'll not go to the Eclipse because that's a very different thing to be talked about. But keeping these platforms in play, I have seen most of the companies going for a tool which is coming over here, which understand. The reason why this particular tool stands out than the others is of the basic thing. This actually acts like an IDE. It's an IDE, so you have to be a bit more careful about considering which tool, because some of them are advanced editor. Okay, so we call Source Insight as a advanced editor. If you actually have a Google and see that, so they call themselves that. But in understand this particular product, they call them as a IDE itself. So you can do a lot many things in that, including building your source code and everything. Okay, and you have a lot many ways you can actually use this tool on an embedded scenario. So I love it when you actually talk about working on an embedded space. I'll come to that particular thing also. And definitely this tool allows you to create the generate the reports and everything. Most of the other tools should have that particular capability, but this also have it in a much better way, obviously, because of the parsing capability. Okay, now again, keeping the baseline constant to be on understand, let us consider what this particular tool offers to the other ones. And I'm hoping that all of you are keeping those 5 things that I have spoken about when I actually point to anything. So understand is a source code analysis and matrix tool. So first thing that I have mentioned to you is basically about an asset management. Okay, so on an asset management side, I always keep in view that a tool should allow me to mention my asset details when I create a project. It might be anywhere. So let us consider that I have a particular framework that I'm using. Okay, I'm not sure that how many people of you are using a specific framework like Qt or something. So if you have been using a particular framework specific to that way, like it can be Qt or it can be some other frameworks. So if you do not have a particular place to mention the framework, then the problem is that those particular libraries which is pertaining to the framework is never been analyzed at all. It actually what the tool does is it just skips them. So most of the time when you're talking about a decision control tree being made, or basically an invocation tree is being made, I miss out those particular things. So it's basically not having entire coverage. So I need a tool to do that in a very proper way, incorporating my framework. So that's one of the things that this particular tool is capable to do. There might be some other one or two in a similar manner, but this particular tool definitely has that. The second is it is designed to maintain a large amount of legacy. So there is another very interesting thing that happens when we actually employ some third-party tool is how much the tool can analyze and how fast it can analyze. Whether it is basically capable to analyze 2 million lines of code, or it has to be taken into piecemeal wise. Okay, so if you are known to certain things like, okay, there are certain tools in market which does something called an exhaustive analysis, and there are some things which does something called a very intrinsic analysis. The difference is, in an exhaustive analysis, what happens is it takes infinite amount of time. Okay, it basically goes to each and every of the detail and goes till the drill down factor, which increases the I would say the cycle time so much of analysis that eventually you see that this tool is not working for you. One of the classic example in that particular space may be Parasoft as a tool. I'm not sure that if people have used it, or maybe some of them are already using it. So it is basically an exhaustive tool which allows you to actually do a lot of things. Maybe I would say not only in that space. We have a lot many tools in that space actually, but they are essentially not a code discovery tool. They are more of finding out coding defects kind of a tool. But the main part is that you need to be very careful about how much load that particular tool can take care at any point in time, and how much time it takes to actually give you the analysis report. So understand as a tool literally does this particular thing in a very specific timeline. I've seen it doing it in a specific timeline. So that is something which I literally find interesting this tool. In fact, to be very honest, I have seen some of the companies been using this particular tool on a very large scale projects on a very day-to-day basis, on a nightly build, but still they do not cry that okay, the analysis was not completed last night, and they come up and the next day morning it's still running. It never happens in them. The other one, which is basically very interesting, is in an embedded scenario. I'm not sure that you people have actually seen this particular thing. If you are using C++ version 14, okay, so there are certain security standardizations being made specific to a language. If you are actually seeing it in a very intrinsic level, so this particular tool allows you to do a particular analysis not only on the cross-platform but also on multi-language. When I'm talking multi-language, I'm talking not only on a multi-language means C, C++, Java, and so on. So that is one definite way. Another thing which allows you to do is within the C, C++ domain itself, it will allow you to actually drill down to different versions of the language. Okay, that makes it more interesting. And the last of this particular thing, which is very catchy, is it creates its own repo. So basically, the reason why I'm mentioning this as a separate pointer is that at the end of the day, when you actually try to understand, okay, fine, analysis is done, everything is done. Now, what I'll do with the data? That this you need a kind of a mechanism where the tool itself can say you, hey guys, this is the data you got, these are the kind of reports I can generate without you even mentioning, because sometimes we are even puzzled that what are the parameters to be taken, what are the metrics to be generated. Because just some time back I was actually consulting another of the defense labs, and they were mentioning that they have come up with something like a security standard guideline. I'm not sure that that guideline detail is basically been publicly available or not, but they actually wanted to know some 5 top metrics that defines the security of a particular project, or maybe they are yardsticks. So they were basically confused, which are those 5? Is it my cyclometric complexity ratio? What it is? They were very confused, so they were actually asking us about that. So we had some brainstorming sessions on that part. So if you have a tool intelligent enough to create those kind of reports based on the kind of an industry, whatever the references they have, to give you a report which is exhaustive and which is basically having those kind of metrics available, then it makes your jobs very simple. You do not have to think too much on that, right? So that's one of the things I wanted to mention over here. Okay, go to the next part. The features. Okay. If I tell you about certain things about like capability of a particular platform, so let us take a generic example of a Visual Studio as an IDE. So essentially, I use that particular IDE just when I actually think that okay, I have a dependency on the .NET framework. And secondly, I actually love some of the features that they have in terms of even pointing me out to some of the basic defects which I'm actually having when I'm writing the code, plus building the code also. So similarly, any platform, whatever I'm talking about, should be having some basic things. So acquiring a code knowledge is basically something which is a big thing which is missing out in most of the IDEs which I have worked on. Including the Wind River as an IDE if I'm talking about. So the main problem over here is that we take a part of the code from the repo and work on, right? So we essentially do not actually bother about the entire code structure until and unless the program, until and unless we actually give the entire program to be as a scope of that particular tool. So if it is not, then the code knowledge is basically which is missing out. So this particular product which I'm talking about takes care of that. Now again, keeping this particular product as a baseline, if any of the tools or any of the products which you choose have this particular feature of entire understanding of entire code knowledge, I think you should be having a look into that, because that's very important part. Metrics and report generation, definite. So not exact metrics and report generation as of, I would say it should allow you to create your own metrics and own way of reports, because certain times we actually have our own way of reporting, right? So some people are using their own dashboards to do that. So that particular thing I'm pointing out over here. Okay. The other things are quite simple. In terms of compliance check, I've already mentioned about the advanced search is obvious. I think that's a part of any of the ID, the advanced search part as of now. Okay, I'll go to the next part. So this is the analysis feature. Now, there are small things we keep on ignoring at times. So we actually are so much busy in terms of our uh, feature development. We keep on thinking, okay, fine, let us not get into the entire program level understanding and things like that. So we do not have an understanding about all the entities which is available in the program. Maybe some of the entities, maybe some of the macros which is available already in some place, which you could have used and made the particular program very easy to work on, is not being known to me. So I have actually defined another macro for an example. Maybe another thing is that where it is being changed. So I do not know the things that has been changed because I have just got the code afresh. I do not know what are the things my ancestors or my earlier colleagues has done on the particular code base. So those are some things which need to be, come up in my understanding. So I never would touch a code until and unless it is very known to me. It is very understandable to me. So these are some things which are very subtle, but I think it's a very intimate things to be taken care of before we actually start up a project. Now, there are IDs, specific IDs, which is basically custom made IDs, which allow you to do so. Uh, okay, one of the biggest problem that I face in an embedded world is since we most of the time we use a Linux environment, we miss out that particular GUI great features which our Windows counterparts can give. So to keep that particular gap as small as possible between the Windows fraternity and the Linux fraternity, you can use a tool like Understand, I would say, where you can actually see the entire thing in one particular window, keeping everything in that particular what is being changed, what are the in a visual way. Okay. The other thing is that this particular tool or any tool, I'm not sure that you people have actually been using some of the architectural tools already or not. Maybe you people are using like Enterprise Architect or maybe some tools like uh, Rhapsody or maybe you might be using some of the tools like LaTeX. I'm not sure about that. But this particular tool allows you to do a fantastic thing. It allows you to create a small architecture, which is basically not architecture as per se, but it is basically a kind of a small module of yours and keep that module in the center and analyze what are the rest of the things doing or the dependencies of the rest of the world to your module. Okay, that's very interesting because if you actually consider it in that way, so you need not to get into the nitty-gritties of the other modules which you are not working with. You are only concerned about the module which is at present in your focus. The rest of the things will start keeping on talking to your module in that way. Okay, so this is a very interesting thing in this particular product. Okay, this is a language. I'll not spend too much of time in this. This is the language capabilities which I suggest that some of the tools have. So I'll not get into this.
May I ask one question for the
Please.
just backs?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Backs, yeah. So you are saying the architecture's features, okay? So might be you had given the Rhapsody, enterprises architecture like that
Correct.
tools.
Mhm.
So the point is that they are creating the auto code generation is there. So the same feature is here.
Yeah. So basically, architectural analysis means I'm talking about creating a conceptual architectural diagram. Okay, that's a box in a box diagram, or maybe a dependency structured matrix, right? DSM kind of a scenario, right? So if you are talking about a kind of a UML class diagram, or you are talking about control flow diagram, because if you are talking about architectural analysis, I would like to know the flow, right? So I would like to know the
Yeah.
dependencies. So that is something which this particular tool allows me to do definitely. But it
So
allows me
they are
to.
not
So
they are not going to create the auto code generation. I
uh,
mean code generation through the model, whatever the architecture diagram we have.
Okay, so you are basically talking about, okay, I have a very interesting product. Maybe offline we can talk about that. I do
Yeah,
have
sure.
a product. I do have a product which
N-
allows you to do that. But yes,
No,
that's not
my
the.
my understanding for these architecture features, whatever you are saying, that we follow, that will be give the only for the model and the flow, whatever the flow. So they
Absolutely.
are not having a features to create the anything like auto code generation. Am I right?
Correct. So
Okay.
auto code generation, there is an open source platform which allows you to do so. We can talk about that offline. But yes,
Yeah,
I
but
am
sure,
known to
sure,
that.
sure.
I'm known to that.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
But again, I'm telling you that is basically something which is not foolproof. Okay. We have been using that for some baseline, but it's not foolproof. Yeah, I have that information. I can share that with you. No problem. Okay. These are some of the programming languages I was mentioning you, that there are certain array of languages people used to call. Okay, I have a very interesting thing I should always mention when I talk about these languages. Now, there are certain products which are very legacy. When we actually talk about any historic projects which have actually been taken care of from the early 1971 kind of scenario. So there are basically some platforms like I'm not sure that how many of you are from the aerospace background. So we use ADA a lot. I'm not sure that whether you have actually been using that or not. So we use ADA a lot in terms of aerospace projects, which is basically airborne. Okay, and on the very interesting point is we use C for anything which is basically ground station. So basically there is a kind of a bridge that need to be made between the ADA module and the C module basically, because these two need to communicate with each other. Due to security reasons, the ADA is still being used over there. So there's a very few tool in the market, very few, okay, which actually analyze ADA. If you actually go into that, you will find it at very few. So if you are totally into an kind of a project which is that much intrinsic in nature, which uses this particular different technology, which is basically the old technology like ADA and the new technology like C++. So you need a tool which can actually figuratively use both this platform together. So this is one such platform. So this is a unique thing in that context. So the other parts, I know there are a lot of things. Even with COBOL, I'm talking about. So these are some of the integrations which makes things very interesting. Okay. Okay, so I'll not go into that detail until unless there's a specific use case that you people have, we can take it offline. But I'm just telling you the beauty of this particular tool bridging this particular gap. Okay,
So,
yeah, please.
so whatever you are saying, so whatever the ADA language as well as the C both can compile in the same ID with that
Absolutely.
different configuration, with different configurations.
Absolutely. In fact, you can actually create one project, one single
Yeah.
project of this tool, which will comprise ADA as well as C, because both the calls
So,
will be made, right?
so GPS, whatever the GPS which is having a compiler for the ADA,
Mm-hmm.
GPS one of the ID which is having a compiling as a ADA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they have also have one more features. Some pragma is there. We can add the our C source code inside in the ADA language. Okay,
Correct.
so we can. So that's also providing the same facilities. ADA as well as the C can
Correct.
compile in the same ID. So
Correct.
similar facilities there.
Yes, yes. Similar one is there. Not only that, those are basically scenarios where those are the IDE which allows you to help in development, right? Not exactly in terms of a code discovery. But if you are talking about a code discovery, we are talking about a very different context here. So here development means, okay, I have a specific kind of an environment. I set in that particular ID. I use ADA. I use C. C is basically a part of that particular pedigree. I can build it, no problem. But if I'm talking about a code understanding, I do not know, because here I have to be very open in terms of whichever environment. ADA's, even ADA has different flavors. ADA has different versions. So if a tool allows me to actually push on which particular ADA, ADA 83 or ADA 95 or whatever, then it allows me to give a rich understanding about that. Right? So this is a code discovery perspective, right? It's an amazing thing to do. So you have to keep that in mind. Okay. So
Okay.
and specifically for C as well. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I will take you, but I'll take some time off to take up the demonstration of. The intention is exactly not to get into the nitty gritty of the tool as such. The intention is still the same about how to re-engineer. That's the base thing that we are talking about here. We will talk about that. So keeping that in view, I would like to show you how I have figured it out, how I do it. Okay. Okay, so let me take you to the tool which allows you to do that. So I have just to save time, I have just opened this. That you need not to worry or think too much in terms of the way that any of the tool looks like, because I will be straightforward in terms of an architecture level. All these tools have the GUI, which is basically tweaked format in terms of an Eclipse. They've taken an Eclipse and they have just tweaked it around. So this is all about the same. So understand, it's no different than that. Okay, important part. First, I was mentioning about the asset management, correct? So I will keep that particular slide back so that we are basically not out of focus. So we are talking about something on an asset management part. So the asset management part has very interesting thing is I have different platforms. Okay, how do I take those platforms in one particular place and analyze? So for that, I have two parts to it. One is, I'll show you both the parts. One is that once I'm actually going into a particular system, so that particular system will be having certain, I would say, kind of, just a minute. Oh, this one. Yeah. So that system will be having certain kind of an architecture, right? So basically they will be having a specific set of compilers, they will be having a specific set of architectures, specific vendors, operating systems, environments, and so on and so on. So I need a particular robust environment where every of those things can be fed. Moreover, I need that in a drop-down one. So basically what I'm saying is, if you have a particular platform which is basically a vanilla platform, what happens is integration becomes a nightmare. Okay. Moreover, once you are integrated, you have to again do the same activity for a new platform. What if you have a platform which has all things listed, most of the things, and if you do not have something which is basically been listed, you can always ask for it from that particular vendor. So this might be there in some other products as well. I am open to say that you can look into this, but this is something which you need to look into. This is while you are configuring a project. Okay, we are actually talking about mixed assets. Okay, so the assets can be anything, it can be any platform, it can be robust. So you have to be taking a platform which can incorporate everything. Okay, so because of the parsing should be done based on this. That is first part. The other one is that when you are talking about kind of a discovery part, okay, or mixed assets, I need a particular kind of a platform where it can be against, or I would say it lists me every of the routines and subroutines I have in the program. Okay, so it doesn't miss anything. So this particular kind of tool allows me to do anything, everything which is there in that particular pedigree of that particular project will be listed. The project can be of anything, because we have embedded projects now which has some flavors of even .NET also on top of it. So that and maybe the Java on top of it, because that speaks to the actual interface, right? So the HMI has some interface which is basically being taken care by that platform. So if I take everything into the platform, that all the entities should be listed. So that's the first part. The second thing that I have mentioned about is the frequent changes. So here, if I'm talking about changes, I was actually pointing about this particular diff. So what this particular tool allows, I would simply tell you, is there something called compare. Okay. Now I think you people have heard about beyond compare already as a tool. So that's particular tool we generally have used always to compare two different entities. But the problem is, as one of you mentioned, how to compare date codes, because that has no clue. That actually used to just compare this particular lines to this particular lines. It doesn't know about anything about why the things are being used, how the things are being used. But this particular tool allows you to actually compare to parsed data. Okay, that's a very rich thing that we are actually comparing with. So we know the control flow, we know everything about that particular piece of code. Okay, so that gives me that edge, okay, to compare it and give you the best. So that is what exactly this particular tool or this kind of tool allows you to do. But I have not seen this particular feature in any other tool which has all these other things. This particular comparison comes as a separate tool. I think you were also mentioning that this comes as a tool. What I was mentioning to you, it should be a part of the normal IDE itself. It should not be a different tool, because that's always a problem of maintaining different tools, right? Okay, the third one, I was mentioning about the security and the traceability part. Now here, if I'm talking about that one, I need a tool which allows me to do another very interesting thing. So I have something in terms of checkers, right? I have basically, I was talking about security means I have basically a standardizations will be there. So there, what I actually want to see is, I want to actually run a piece of code on a specific number of checks, and I want to find out that what are the violations, right? So this particular kind of tool, like understand, does it in a vanilla level. I would not say this is a specialist tool to do that, but definitely it gives you a flavor. So if you are talking about this kind of a scenario, what it does is it gives you that particular thing, kind of a mistrike I'm talking about. These are all basics. So if you're talking about that kind of a checks, so it will allow you to give that particular kind of a flavor where you can actually run the piece of code based on on some specific checks. Now you have to be a bit careful about one more thing. When I say this, I also mention you, should mention you this, that it also allows you to write your own checks, right? But it should not be a very kind of a specific check like MCDC, modified change decision coverage. It cannot be that level, because this tool is not meant for that, but it can do a basic level kind of a scenario. So this can be arrested on a top level. I'm not getting into nitty-gritties of deep down, but on a top level you can do this. So we can take it offline, that if you have specific, you are working on a specific industry, aviation or locomotive, or in some other nuclear or something, and you would like to know which tool is better off in that code compliance check, let me know. I can help you in that. No problem. Okay. Okay. The third part, I've covered the third part. Okay. Fourth part, the legacy part. Okay. So code discovery and understanding. I believe it is very critical for all of us to actually admire one thing, that if I am analyzing a large piece of code, or I am parsing a piece of code, which is basically my build, I don't know, maybe embedded build, we take seconds to build, but in some big projects, right, it takes some hours. Any parsing tool will be taking 1.5 to 2 times the time of build to analyze it. So that you have to keep in mind. So keeping that in mind, I have to create an entire of the AST, which is abstract syntax tree, and give you a particular kind of a block diagram or something of that sort. I do not have exact I do not know which particular one will give me a better diagram as of, but I'll check that if something can give. Okay, this is a very small one. So basically the idea is that if you can actually take up any of those particular blocks, what it tool essentially should allow you to do is, it should allow you to give you these options. Okay, it should allow you to give you something like a butterfly diagram. It should allow you to give you something like, it should call graph, something of that sort. In fact, I do not have too much of a time, but I believe I can actually show you something. Just a minute, I think. Okay. Okay, so basically what I intend to show you is a project where these particular graphs are much more mature. That's what I intend to show you. So the idea for this particular thing is that, as I mentioned to you, that one of you are mentioning about the architectural part, right? So when I actually see a large complex project, okay, in one screen, in a box diagram, on a conceptual architectural diagram, I can hardly find anything, because I cannot make anything out of it. I do not know that whether you people have faced that or not. So I personally prefer something like a UML class diagram, or I would prefer more of a control flow diagram, something of that sort. So that will allow me to actually understand the flow better. Okay. So let us consider that I have this, and I have this thing, and I think this one gives me a better picture. Yep, it gives me. So if you see this particular diagram, okay, this is basically a control flow diagram. You can actually go for a smaller depth to give you a better understanding. Okay, so this kind of a figure allows me to get a better understanding about what are being this particular. This is the one entity I'm talking about, which is basically calling some other entities around the globe. So this kind of information is something which I'm looking at. Moreover, I can even go for something like a control flow diagram. So this is a kind of a diagram which allows me to get me a better information than your normal conceptual architectural diagram or something. So the architectural part you are talking about, this was exactly I was mentioning to you. Okay. Even I have the capability in such tools to give me something in terms of the UML class diagram. So I have seen UML class diagram being used extensively. So if you are talking of re-engineering, so re-engineering, I literally have not seen any of my clients not having a reference to the UML class diagram.
So these, whatever the graph, it is created by the only from the source code.
That is correct.
It's automatically created. So
That's
whatever
correct.
the call tree as well as all those diagram.
Correct. It creates
Yeah.
that, keeping in view, it's all static, it's not dynamic, first of all. And this keeping in view about the framework that you have used, keeping in view the kind of language flavor that you have used. So here you have to be also be careful about certain things. If a tool doesn't allow you to instrument view those things in the beginning, which I have actually shown you earlier, it doesn't make sense for these particular graphs, because these graphs need to be fully exhaustive. I'm using the word exhaustive again and again because that's a very technical word that comes into play when you actually do for an analysis. So again, there's nothing called I support it 90%. I do not understand it as a consultant, and I think no one understands that. Because 10% that is left out, I do not know. Okay, what else I can do? I have mentioned to you about the other parts about the graph. I can do a kind of a cluster call. I can do a call relationship. And also I have something called a dependency matrix. So I have to check this one, maybe just a minute. Box dependency and dependency. What changed? Something. So okay, so what I'm trying to do over here, very simple. I'm trying to create a dependency graph which allows me to actually, even I do not have to do this. I think this tool allows me to even view it as a dependency graph, dependency view. Yep, it has that. So what here I am basically bothered about the dependency. See, if I'm talking going back to the architectural part which I was mentioning, one of the main thing that I was looking into that particular kind of Rhapsody model, or if you're talking about enterprise architect, everything talks about dependencies only, right? So here it depends on is basically which is the pointer, and I can actually talk about that, and gives me a dependency viewer. So it's pretty easy for me to get a thing, and I can definitely, I was showing you the export part, so I can definitely export in a dot CSV format or something of that sort, and I can go ahead and use it somewhere else. So these are typical information that I can get from this particular product, and I think that it's a generic product, so it is like there for ages. Like it's understand was earlier been known as understand C, understand CPP. Then eventually from the editor it started to build up itself and club all the languages together in one particular tool itself, and then it became a particular ID. And all the other things that I'm able to show you today is because they have done certain changes and evolved. Okay. So this is more or less that I had to put it up, because I think the last part, productivity and time market challenges, is something which has been addressed already if I take care of the other four parts. I think so. If I have missed out certain thing on the processes part, let me know, because these particular products which I'm talking about are DevOps ready. So anything of this sort will be having a command line interface which you can easily push into your CI/CD pipeline. Okay, so you need not to bother about that. You need not to, if you are having a Jenkins platform that you are talking about TeamCity or something of that sort, you need not to bother about the integration part. This takes care of it. In fact, there are a lot many ways you can integrate these kind of products. So this was something which I wanted to just address to think I am within the time. Any questions apart from whatever you people have asked for? Yes, I will answer that particular question of yours separately. I remember about generating the code from the architecture level. So that's a different tool that we can talk about separately. But apart from that, anything else that you need me to address?
Hello, Anirban.
Yep, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I want to know about the metrics point what you have mentioned.
What are the kind
So
of metrics it can generate on something of that sort?
yeah, so the complexity, whatever is there in the code, do we have any reports? Can we
Absolutely.
generate it?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
can you show something like that?
Yeah. Why not? Okay, so basically,
Thank you.
let us
C for C code,
see this.
just a C code.
So let us consider it in this particular manner. So here, what I am choosing here is basically something which is just the which particular thing I'll take care of. Okay. Now this shows me a graph. Okay. Now, if I want to go and configure the project itself, because when you actually configure the projects, there will be one particular section where you will be able to do a lot many things in terms of the metrics. I believe this is the option. Yes. So you have a series of metrics, okay, that can be incorporated in the report. Okay. So you just name it, it will be having it. That is one thing.
It's for C, right? For C.
Absolutely. This is for C. Yes.
Something is JavaScript selected.
No,
Count statement.
I have
Count
taken,
statement. Can you select that? Count statement. Yeah.
This one?
So in the count statement, a little bit down. Still.
Last two statements.
Yes.
This one? This one.
Count stmnt.
Okay, this one. Okay.
Just.
Okay, good enough. So you want to see on that part, right? Okay, good enough. So once you actually take care of that, say okay. Just a minute, and then I say reports. I have to say generate report, and I say generate. So you need to actually first of all configure the reports the way I was configuring it. Once that has been configured, then you just trigger it through this particular generate report. So one more thing I should also add on is this particular kind of platforms also allows you to create your own metrics. You do not bother that some of them are not there. Okay, so you have we have a library of Python libraries, and we have some in
Anirban, can we do for one single .c file?
Yeah. Definitely. So
it looks like it will take 15 minutes.
No, okay. No, I don't. Okay.
I want to see the reports. Actually, previously one day you came, you gave the demonstration, but it was taking a huge time to show the reports.
Yes.
So can you make for one file so that at least I can see some reports?
Just a minute. I'll just take it.
Yeah.
I'll just take it off. I believe I have some reports already there. Just a minute. I'll just check on that whether I have some reports already been created somewhere.
For a single file, if you are able to generate, it will be fine.
I'll do that. Just a minute. I have already some reports been created. I'll just check on that. Do something of that sort on there. Okay. Anyways, I'll put it here. It's stuck somewhere. So it is possible, because what I was actually showing to you is that only. So specific to which particular one if one particular file, it cancels. It's not canceling somehow. It's taking some time to cancel.
It's okay.
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that if you do not want to get the report for the entire project, you want to do for one specific file. That was exactly I was trying to show you in that report section, right? So I was trying to find out and drill down. Remember, language within that there was some C within that. So like that, you can just drill it down to the particular file you want the report for, and you can just do that. Somehow, unfortunately, I don't know, it is basically stuck somewhere. But yes, that is possible. That is possible. I'll do one thing. I'll do one thing. I will do one
Can you
thing.
show? Can you share the already generated reports at least then?
Just a minute. Just a minute.
Yeah, some reports already generated. If you say you are saying at least.
It will show you something of this sort. Are you able to see the report?
Yep.
In this particular point.
I'm more focused on this. Okay, this is one now generated or what?
Yeah, this is partly generated. So if you have partly generated one also, okay, you can see that. So
Okay.
it's timestamped.
Statement. Okay. Command lines. Okay.
Okay. So if you are going for the entire report, what it will do is it will be giving a kind of an indexed report. So indexed report will be having a lot many more information, including these also. So it will be having a kind of a chapter wise. You can go to that particular index, you can just click it, it will come like that. So if you complete the entire analysis, entire report, so it takes 5-10 minutes to be generated. So you have this particular thing in the text format also. In HTML, I'm showing you the text format also. You can export it.
Okay, fine.
Okay. So I think I'm done with the time which I was given. So if any other questions is there, please do feel free to come back with your questions. I think the coordinates are already with you guys. For anything, it can be as generic as what is the best practice in finding out a specific kind of maybe dependency or something like that. So it need not to be specific to any particular tool. So let us let that be a flat thing. So you can just put it on. I'll be more than happy to address that.
One point for the mix assets, whatever you are saying now, the
Yes,
platform,
yes, yes,
whatever the
yes.
different platform, how it is going to help, to us means which type of error they will show me.
See, for example,
When different ARM like QNX, yeah, whatever the platform we can use. How identify the errors?
See, let us consider that today I am actually having a particular. I'm not sure that you people are using a family of that particular product. I'm talking about an MCU or an MPU. Let us consider it in that way. So if I'm talking about, let us consider I'm talking about any Renaissance product. Okay. And the Renaissance has a family of products. Okay, let us consider that we are talking the RZ series, RZ. So RZ has a family which has around 25 to 26 flavors of that. Okay. Now these all flavors have separate security layers. Okay, and they have been used in separate specific reasons because some of the platforms are basically having more memory footprints, some are having less. So if you want to change one particular MCU and go to the other one, in terms of the impact which you are having in terms of code, what are the changes that you need to go for the code? So you need a code discovery way where you can actually give that as an input, and because anyway you have to code it, but you have to make that particular discovery in that way. So if I'm going back to the tool, okay, and if I'm actually going to that particular project configuration part, you can see that when I actually go and see say that okay options and it should be straight options. So when I see that ARM, you see there are a lot many varieties. This is ARM generic, ARM embedded, and so on. So there might be some other flavors also. So if you are not able to specify these, what will happen is the libraries associated with these, which you have written in the code, will be bypassed. So you cannot get a parsed data which can allow you to give you this kind of graphs or something. So that's the major problem if you are not having a tool like that. Okay, but the other tools may have this particular feature inbuilt, may not. So I'm not known to all the tools, but most of the tools, if you are seeing in the embedded space, need to have this particular thing. What I have seen is what they allow to do is you to configure this specifically to the tool separately, not as a drill down. Okay, so it is basically an add-on task. So you need to be a bit careful about that part because every time you change a flavor, you need to add that. And I'm talking about some minor changes and not big changes, small changes, because I've seen that particular thing very often when you actually use a family of MCUs. Do I address your question? It's not exactly ARM architecture. If you have to be very specific, within that itself we have small changes within that. So we are a bit more careful about those particular changes, because that has to be taken care by in the code itself, and that has to be understood by the any kind of platform that you're talking about. Anything, any tool should be taking care of it.
It's okay, but not 100%. Okay, so I agree for that, but I have a lot of questions, but their time is not permit
Yeah,
for that.
time. Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
we can have an offline on that. No problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you guys for joining in. And again, as I mentioned, if you have any queries or something of that sort, please put it forward. We will be more than happy to address you. I have some subject matter experts also with us. So we will definitely make sure that those have been addressed. If not me, someone else will definitely take care of it and answer. Thank you for joining in. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.